Hello, friends. How are you? Happy Thursday. We got questions yesterday. We got two questions. I'm going to answer one of them today and one of them tomorrow. And I very much appreciate the questionnaires. If you have a question that you want answered or you want to talk about or whatever you want me to talk about, put it in the comments. This was kind of the intent of this show when I first started it 9+ years ago. And I kind of never really pursued pushing it. So, questions and answers, advice, whatever, let's go. Yesterday, first question I'm going to answer is from our friend Sir Bob Design, longtime friend of the show, game designer. We know each other from the game hobby. Sir Bob asked a simple question that provoked an old memory of mine. And that is, have you ever thought about traveling somewhere really remote? Yeah. I fantasized as a child. I have always been an outdoor person. I mean, let me take that back. I used to be an outdoor. I would consider myself still competent in the outdoor space, but growing up, the outdoors was my space. Above my parents' house, they lived kind of on not at the top of a hill, but on a hill. At the ridge of that hill was woods, and I spent my childhood up there. That was my playground. It was my favorite place to be. I hunted with my grandfather and my uncle and my cousin's husband as a kid. I fished a lot as a kid. The outdoors was definitely my space. And when I read this question, I didn't frame it in a current sense. I framed it in that it brought up a memory of childhood. And this goes back to like childhood innocence and just how dumb we are, like, of the world. I live in West Virginia, and there are some very remote areas of this state. However, where I live, not really. There's remote-ish areas, but they're not very remote. And but I didn't know that as a kid. I thought when we drove down the highway and you look over and you see a patch of woods, that patch of woods just extended, I don't know, until the next major city. I didn't know that there was a lot going on back there. And so I used to have this fantasy about being taken to one of these spots along the highway and dropped off and then picked up like a month later. This fantasy of just living on my own in the wilderness. This was long before shows like Man vs. Wild and Grizzly Man and all that stuff happened. This was long before all of that. This was just my own personal fantasy of survival because I, at that time, felt I could handle it, and I still think I could. I still think if you dropped me off in the wilderness, at least in West Virginia, I could survive. I could survive a month on my own. With limited tools. And I used to make up rules for that game. Like, what if I was allowed to take a pack? What would I put in that pack? What if I was allowed to tool? Like, I used to play this thought experiment of how I would handle going off into the woods alone. As far as traveling somewhere really remote, yeah, I've often, as an adult, thought about doing things like the Amazon by bike. That's a pretty intense thought, and there are people who do it and there are people who die doing it, but traversing the Amazon by bike, like like a street and trail bike, would be a really good time for me. Another one that I guess is probably remote enough in terms of the question that you're asking is I have often dreamed of hiking the Rockies and fly fishing the like mountain lakes for cutthroat trout. And I think there is enough land out there that you could consider that to be extremely remote. There's no help within a day's walk, that kind of thing. I've had that fantasy since my 20s. That's been something that I've always wanted to do. Someday I'll probably will do it, but I think I'll hire a guide. It'll be one of those kind of things because when we were out there last year, the Rockies were super inspiring to me, but I also realized, we were at Denver level, whatever that is, mile high, and it was warm, and then we drove up this mountain, and it was terrifying, right? Like it was not terrifying, but if I was on foot, it would be terrifying. And so I don't think that that's something that I would want to do, just try to do it. I think that's something that I would do only with a guide. So don't know that I'll get to do that. Maybe someday. Other remote ideas that I've had would be, things like the Baja. Like, at some point in my life, I thought about racing the Baja or something, or being a crew member on that team. The Canadian wilderness has always fascinated me. Alaska, being in a very remote, like helicopter drop-in hunt kind of situation, has always fascinated me. I would love to do stuff like that. I'm much more inclined to visit colder climates. The thing about the Amazon is it's kind of gross down there, but it's also extremely teeming with wildlife that I could survive on if needed, but also teeming with dangerous diseases and poisonous plants and animals. I don't know. I don't know that I would ever actually pull that one off. But and the last thing, I guess that this would definitely count, I think, as being really remote, is I've often had romanticized the idea of being a New England crab fisherman, and I think taking one of those rickety little boats out into the ocean is a certain risk. It's a certain like remote thing. I've never really had the fantasy of like sailing from the across the Atlantic or anything like that, which would be another version of this. But I think that doing a multi-day at sea in a rickety little crab boat, that counts. I think maybe, I don't know. Those would probably all the thoughts that I've had in a very long time. Recently, in the last few years, I can tell you the turning point for me. I've always been a rural person. My town, my city, quote city, is not, it's less than 20,000 people. I live in a pretty rural little community here where there's trees all around me and I can walk into the woods. And I've always held that I would not want to live in any city. There's been a few that I've visited that were interesting to me, like Madison, Wisconsin. I've often said I would move to Madison. But after visiting Poland and after visiting their actual cities where hundreds of thousands of people live in these amazing little communities, I've started to kind of bend. And maybe it comes with age. Maybe it comes with the idea that the convenience of living close to everything might outweigh the inconvenience of living close to everything. And so I've become less of a escape-y, like I want to go escape to the middle of nowhere, and more of a maybe I want to be closer to something. And maybe it's playing music. That's also part of it. I think Poland, playing music, like as I'm learning to play music and I'm striving to play music, I'm discovering how difficult that is here because I don't have a community of musicians to lean on. I don't have neighbors that I can go play with. There's not bars that I can go to and find other musicians unless I travel to the next town or here or there or whatever. And so I've discovered I have less of a desire to be remote, and that's interesting. It's an interesting shift in life I did not foresee. I hope that answers the question. Thank you for the question. What about you guys? Where would be your remote destination if you were to take time off and go someplace unimaginable? Let me know in the comments while you're down there. Like the video. Doesn't matter whether you liked it or not. Just hit the button. And please subscribe if you're new. We are trying to get back to 25,000 subscribers, and we will do it. Just keep it up. Keep hitting the button. Now, I mean, only hit it once, because then you'll unsubscribe, and we don't want that. I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's 1,000 plus little things happy, successful people do differently. We have been learning... What have we been learning? 30 lessons for finding strength in hard times, and we are on number 15, consciously nurture your inner hope. A loss, a worry, an illness, a dream crushed, no matter how deep your hurt or how high your aspirations, do yourself a favor and pause at least once a day, place your hands over heart, and say aloud, hope lives here. That's a little hokey. I think it's good enough just to remember that hope is an option. And though putting too much weight in hope can mean that defeat is even more crushing, hope will keep you from suffering so deeply from that crushing defeat. Keep hope alive.